Sup guys, we're on to the 4th tier list today. After the Destroyer tier list, I haven't really gone out of my way to make disclaimers about the seriousness of this series. And I realized that someone might click on one of the later episodes and be like, what is this garbage? However, it seemed like most people understood the essence of the videos, which I'm grateful for. Notice how I said most, because there are some exceptions. On my Battleship tier list video, I received this comment from @IsaacFoster1113. Actually, the comment itself was pretty funny, so I pinned it. I don't mind if you attack other people, but if you're gonna come at me, I'm gonna assume that you're also signing up for whatever I got for you in return. Like, dude, you spelled your own name wrong. It's Isaac, not Isaac. You should probably get that checked out first before you talk about my objectively true tier list. So, I've made this alignment chart for people who have been watching these tier lists. On the left side are new players who are looking for information, and on the right side are veterans who aren't necessarily looking to learn anything but just want to be entertained. At the top are the people who understand the seriousness of these videos, and then at the bottom are the ones who don't. If you're in the top left, then you've got a bright future ahead of you. If you're on the bottom left, that's alright. Read some guides and just continue playing the game, and then come back later. If you're in the top right, then you're pretty much the intended audience for this series. And if you're in the bottom right, like Isaac, then you should probably quit the game, because it does not seem like you're having a good time at all. You're probably just looking for someone to stroke your confirmation bias, but you won't find that here. Wait, maybe Isaac was just messing with me and I took it way too far. Sorry about that, Isaac. It's nothing personal. Got a little carried away there and almost forgot this was supposed to be a tier list video. Now, it's time to talk about heavy cruisers. Here's what a normal field of view looks like, which is what destroyers and light cruisers see. And this is what heavy cruisers see. And if the enemies have shields, this is what they see. Do you see the problem? Despite their guns being quite strong on paper, they are held back significantly by their narrow angle. Also, the Drake gun, which ideally would be the best gun that every CA uses, has such bad spread that if the enemy is standing slightly further away than usual, its DPS drops under that of guns which are inferior on paper. For more details on how or why this happens, check this video. And if I can figure it out, I'll try to link it somewhere in the top right. Unlike light cruisers, almost all heavy cruisers are just stat sticks, so there's little reason to use a weaker one over a stronger one if you're strictly concerned about performance. The final nail in the coffin comes in the form of large cruisers because they're the holy grail of stat sticks with better guns that don't get blocked by shields. Anyways, that's enough talking. It's time to reveal the tier list. Now, I know I've changed up the names of the tiers, but just hear me out. The real tier list is basically just this top left portion. Aside from Baltimore, the rest, like I mentioned, are just stat sticks. But I have a little surprise for you guys later. I'll start by going through the actual tier list. First, Aegir is pretty much uncontested as the best Vanguard in the game. She's the best tank, which almost always contributes the most damage. She might not have the best personal damage, but her slow and armor brick is much more valuable than the extra bit of damage other large cruisers can bring. Next is Anchorage, who is the only heavy cruiser who can compete with the large cruisers in terms of bulk and has a guaranteed smokescreen that can be timed to enemies' bursts, making her the best tank that also significantly increases the survivability of your other Vanguards. Next, I'll talk about all three of the SS tier large cruisers at the same time. Of the three, Brest has the highest bulk, especially across multiple battles due to her heal, with Kronstadt coming in second and Azuma coming in third. Kronstadt has the highest damage, with Azuma and Brest being a toss-up for second depending on how far back the enemy likes to sit. I put Kron last because she has my least favorite design out of the three, but in general she's probably the most useful one. Next is Cheshire, who is a stat stick that also doubles as an AA carry. The fact that she compresses both the tank and AA role makes her very easy to slot in for plane hell chapters and keeping your carriers concealed. And there's no other ship who can fulfill both roles at the same time like she can. I'll also briefly mention Baltimore, who is difficult to put in SS tier with the monsters who are up there, but she will likely be very popular when the new event drops with Yorktown and Hornet too. I also gave a special tier to Portland because of the amount of work she put in for me and so many other players as well in the early days of pushing through a campaign, so I had to show my respect. And I suppose I'll address why Rune is down in F tier. Basically, I did it just to piss off as many people as I could. Wait, no, sorry, that just slipped out by mistake. What I meant to say was, you can now buy Idle Rune from Core Data, who does more damage, has more utility, and pretty much the same bulk as a fully completed rune. And with a new update, where you can just use Rune's paid skins for Idle Rune, there's quite literally no reason to ever use Rune. Using her is pretty much the equivalent of using a dupe ship. I've seen some people who use like dupe New Jerseys, but this is even worse because this is a worse version. Her only purpose now is to give you +1 heavy cruiser FP at level 120. If you still want to use her, that's completely fine, and up to you, but don't pretend like you're better than the double Musashi enjoyers. Now it's time for something that I think is much more useful than a tier list would be for heavy cruisers. I have no idea what to call this, but the file I saved this as is called chart.png, so I guess I'll just call it a chart. The first section are ships ordered in EHP from left to right. I pretty much just ripped this information off Meebot's EHP calculations, so I will link his spreadsheet in the description. But you do have to read a lot of the documentation to make sense of it, so good luck with that. I'll also address some of the nuances. The squishiest ship that I included in the lineup is Kasumi. I generally don't care about collab ships, but she's hot, so I made an exception for her. Just to the left of Kasumi would be Zara and Pola, but I didn't make enough space to include them. Idol Rune's stats suggest that she is slightly squishier than Portland, but her shields make her slightly more tanky against shelling damage, while Portland has a better time surviving aviation damage. Haguro gives damage reduction to the rest of your vanguards, which is quite rare amongst good tanks. Cheshire obviously has much more bulk against aviation than the other options. I didn't include Prince Heinrich because she's pretty much just Adalbert, but slightly more squishy. If she was on here, she would be right beside Adalbert to the left. San Francisco's placement is assuming that she is in the tank position, and that's pretty much it. If you want to see more about EHP, then check out Meebot's spreadsheet. The bottom half is a scale of DPS, which doesn't have a detailed documentation, and it's based off of my personal experience, which means that it's objective because I'm never wrong, as proven in the last 3 tier lists. The top row contains gun-focused ships, while the bottom one has ships that have a good amount of damage in both torps and barrages. Again, I'll go through the nuances one by one. Idol Rune on auto is not very impressive, but if you can make use of her debuffs on manual, she is one of the very best options for heavy cruisers, and being this far down the DPS totem pole doesn't reflect her true potential. Minneapolis might be underranked, but she's essentially a mob fleet only ship, so I can't just judge her damage at face value assuming that her buff is always up. Wichita and London buff the damage of your other vanguards, which really isn't seen in most of the other options. Zara could be above Baltimore and Bremerton if you buff her with Vittorio Veneto. Baltimore should do more damage than Bremerton, but is locked to AP ammo, so Bremerton beats her against light and probably heavy armor as well. San Francisco's placement here is assuming that she's in the rear position, but if used as a tank, she would probably fall to around or slightly under Zara's level. Hendrik obviously deals the most DPS out of all the heavy cruisers, except against light armor, where San Francisco could do more with a plus 13 Tash gun secondary. In the second row, there's pretty much nothing notable to point out. Ibuki should deal the most damage, but comes with all the pros and cons of being a torpedo-reliant ship. Now, you might be wondering, why did you do this instead of just making a tier list? Well, here's why. Say you're doing a fight and all the ships to the right of this line can survive, while ships to the left will potentially sink. You can now choose the highest DPS ship from the pool of ships that can survive for sure. This is much more useful than choosing some arbitrary cutoff for damage and bulk to split them into tiers, especially since all of them pretty much do the same thing. Keep in mind, all these ships are pretty much just weaker than the large cruisers and Anchorage, except Drake if the enemy has no shields. So I hope this concept was useful to you, and I realized that I probably should have put all the ships in the DPS category into the bulk one as well. But again, just refer to Meebot's charts for more details on that. And that's about it for the heavy and large cruisers tier list. There's only the carrier one remaining, but I'll be saving that one for after the new ships this Thursday, so it won't be coming out for a couple of days. In the meantime, if you haven't seen it already, I made something similar to a tier list for submarines, but it's not as heavily opinion-based and contains pretty much only analysis of empirical data and no entertainment. But maybe I'm not funny at all and you guys actually prefer the more serious format. I most likely won't be doing that kind of analysis for the main hull classes though, as there's simply too many variables and differences to account for. But I'll continue to make deep dives into certain ships that I found interesting, like Hood after she got her unique augment. As always, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.